work on the Henderson County Transportation Advisory Committee. They are in the process of submitting priorities for the next possible funding cycle, of which they warned us that funding is very tight. So a lot of these projects, and who knows, maybe all of them won't get worked. But anyway, they need by my next meeting, so I would need any feedback from you all by our next meeting here. Because the transportation meeting is after the council's next meeting. They need 7 projects to put on the priority list for roads, and I've tried to explain this information in this sheet that I typed up, and 7 for bicycle and pedestrian.
Like that.
Yeah. The first chart on this page are the ones from last year that have been funded. So these will probably be worked, although I did mention in the top there's a little bit of a quirk here. The very last one, Canuga Road, that one has actually been taken off the list so that they could use that money to rebuild US 64 interchange over I-26. So those in that first list, because they were on there last year, they automatically roll forward. And then our Henderson County Committee is to add 7 more. And they've come up with 6 here in this next chart. And if anybody knows of anything else, there's still 1 spot, although anybody in the county can add a project there. But if you'll notice on there, the very last one is Fanning Bridge Road modernization. And last time they did this, it only scored at 8.09, but hopefully with the traffic that's been added and the fact that we are trying to sell that piece of property, hopefully the scores might go up a little bit. So I'd recommend leaving that one on there. Like I said, if you think of any other projects that you want to add, this is the time to do it.
Rutledge is already funded, right?
Rutledge what?
Rutledge Road.
It's a whole road.
That's already been funded, right?
You mean,
I know it's been funded for resurfacing.
yeah,
But I don't know about other
yeah. No,
improvements.
this is actually road improvements.
Okay.
This has nothing really to do with just maintenance resurfacing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then for bike ped projects on the back, the projects they've already got on the list, and there's already 7 there. One of them is Fanning Bridge Road, and that's trying to possibly put pedestrian sidewalk, and they have it listed all the way from US 25 to Underwood Road, so that would connect all the subdivisions. So that is a really good one. So I suggest we leave that one on too. So if you can think of anything else, let me know. Like I said, the money is going to be very tight, but at least Fletcher has 1 project on both the roads list and on the bike paths list. And I will say that the only reason that these 2 projects are on this list is because I had them put on because I'm on that committee. When I resign at the end of the year, if we don't put somebody on that committee, these kind of things may not come up for the town of Fletcher. So it is important to get somebody on that committee to keep out for Fletcher's interest.
Are they quarterly?
No, they're monthly.
Okay.
They skip several times. They don't usually meet, I think, in November. They don't usually meet in July. The 2 committees I'm on, first of all, it's the Henderson County Traffic Advisory Committee, and they meet in the old municipal building on King Street. They meet at 4 o'clock on 3rd Wednesday of the month. they do have the option where you can phone in and still participate. And I've done that numerous times if I've been on vacation in Florida or something. I'll do
And
that.
I'm an alternate for
Yeah.
Bob on the
Yeah.
Henderson County MPO, and then there's the French Broad River.
And then there's the French Broad MPO, which is the Henderson County one is just Henderson County. French Broad is where the information from Henderson County and all the other areas in the French Broad Metropolitan Planning Organization, they all get together. So quite often things start at the Henderson County level, and then they move up to the French Broad River MPO level, and then from there they go to the state level. Now, that one, they meet at the, what's
The Land and Sky office.
Land Sky offices out Lester Highway. But that one they have set up now with Zoom capabilities. So I haven't gone to one out Lester Highway in the last year probably. Well, since COVID started. That's when they started doing it with Zoom, and they found out they had better attendance doing it that way. Because think about it, people that live in Brevard or something and driving way out Lester Highway, that's a long drive. So, look these over, and if you have any suggested changes or anything, just let me know by next week so I can. Basically, I'll report to the Henderson County group that we're agreeable with the list that they've come up with.
And just, if I can just add one
Sure.
other thing, I know you had mentioned, even if we don't get our former developer or another one with a similar project that would maybe lead to TIA mitigation requirements, that right turn lane,
Yeah.
that we still push for whatever set of improvements that are done to Fanning Bridge Road in totality, that they include some type of creation of a right lane coming,
Right.
Eastbound here.
And
towards
that
the
is
intersection.
included in this,
Yeah.
this thing here. Actually, this one about Fanning Ridge Road, they said that the biggest parts of it, modernizing the roadway, the biggest parts are gonna be adding a turn lane at this end and making the turn lane larger at the other end, which is also needed. The tricky thing is, this end is in one division, and the other end is in the other division. The other end is actually in Uncle
Yeah,
Grant's.
it's division.
But they said that happens on a regular basis, and they just take part funding out of one, part funding
Yeah,
out of the
and the
other.
vast majority of it's in ours. and
But I think this end is the one that's needed the most.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right, any other updates from council? All right,
Yeah, I have a quick question.
go ahead.
I went to the job fair this past week up here at the Ag Center and noticed that Black Mountain Police Department's there, the ALE was there, and all the things, and so I was walking around with the Captain
Gutierrez.
Gutierrez, me and him were walking around and talking about it. That would be a really good spot for us to go and maybe recruit for our police department. So we asked the Buchan County Sheriff's Department booth, he said it was free for them to set up. So it's kind of a win-win, other than just paying an employee to be up there. But I think it'd be a good idea that next time they have a job fair that we think about participating in it.
Even if we don't have any openings at the time, we might get some names of somebody that may be interested.
Yeah, and so I asked them, and they seemed to act like they were getting some good leads for those top positions that were up there. So I was just, that's all I got.
Did you say our police department did have?
No.
But
He was up there.
He was
I
there.
guess he was, I guess maybe, I'm not sure why he was
Yeah.
there. I guess maybe just to,
He might
Is
just
it
do like
working?
you, just to see what was there.
I
yeah.
don't know, he was in uniform and I think
Yeah.
he hung out for a while like
Yeah,
he
you
was
could
supposed to
have,
be
you could
there.
have recruits come up,
Yeah, but we both agreed that that would be maybe a good spot to,
Yeah.
because there was a lot of people showed up for that. I was amazed, I'd never been to one, so I was
Glad they had
blown
good
away
turnout. Okay.
at the turnout.
I'm sure he'll mention something to chief about it, I can too. Thank you.
Well, I asked him if it could be my idea, so. I'm just kidding.
We'll make sure.
We'll make sure you're there.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm just teasing.
That was a good idea. Any other updates from council? All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Any questions, comments, concerns, any item there? All right, moving on to item number 4, the presentation of year-end tax collector's report for 2023. Madam Tax Collector, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I gave you your report. We closed out 2022 taxes, June 30th. That original levy that you see there, that 4.4, that is the actual amount that we billed from Henderson County when we billed out the 1st of July, I guess, August. Then the discoveries that you see there, that 99,000, that is your utility billing that we get from the Department of Revenue. We have to show those as discoveries, and then any corrections or anything that the county failed to not bill out, they were waiting to see if they did a listing sheet, stuff like that. The releases, that 17,000, that's the total that y'all release monthly when we have release. Yeah. So, my total levy ended up being the 4.5, and we made payments of $4,499,000. So June 30th, I had on the books $9,309.46. But on Friday, we had multiple online payments. So I couldn't show those because you have to wait another day for those online payments. So we collected another $1,000 just, on Friday.
So those are the ones that squeaked in at the very last minute.
Very last minute. And then we had one today, so we're down to probably like 7,000 and something. So we're right at 99 something. So
And that's good. I mean, like I was telling her beforehand, I sat in some meetings where they say, oh, we've got 100% tax collection. And more than likely what they're doing is just writing things off before they get to the end of the year.
and it's probably a lot, I don't think, that Black Rock does not have no homes. That is where most of ours is, that we have delinquent mobile homes, sea-doos, boats, trailers that people use, utility trailers, stuff like that. Personal property.
That's still 99% is a really good rate.
That's it.
Any questions,
Any
comments?
questions?
We thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Candy.
All right, moving on to item number 5, this is our public hearing related to some image for
Thanks,
land
Candy.
development code. Do you have anything to add to that, Mark?
If you wanted to discuss any, Eric will be here to give some background, but just the gist of it really quick is, you heard about cryptocurrency mining, and you did the moratorium. You brought it to the planning board had a good discussion on it. There was some discussion about maybe making it a permitted use in M1, which would be the most logical, which is their manufacturing is M1. It's kind of a warehousing type use. But after further discussion, they unanimously agreed to, because of the potential detrimental things involved in cryptocurrency, which is noise and excessive energy usage, to make it a not permitted use in all of our zoning districts. So that's what this would, it defines it, and then it makes it an unpermitted or non-permitted use in all the districts. So that's the cryptocurrency mining. The Article 4 regarding the RVs and campers. So several years ago, you had passed a change to the land development code that further defined, this is people setting up an RV or camper on their property. You're not supposed to be living in it or it being there permanently. And so you passed regulation no more than 30 days, and we allowed it 4 times during the year. They added some clarifying language that it goes 30 days 4 times a year, which is pretty generous. not be, running together. Yeah,
Consecutive.
consecutive,
Yeah.
that, so, some clarifying language, it's not, so someone just plop one down there for 4 months.
So if someone has a visitor that comes for a week in a camper, it'll be okay?
Yes, yes,
Good.
that's okay. And, we do have one exception, if their home's burnt down, or they're building a property, an active permit, building process, that they can stay in there while that's being, built or rebuilt.
Let somebody
But
thought of
that-
that, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, and we have a couple instances, I think 1 or 2 going on in the town. So that's what that's about, with the RVs and campers, and the language of it.
That's not gonna affect this fellow that we just, okay.
What they've got, that is an RV camping.
Okay, I just want to make
Use.
sure.
Yes, no, that's a good
Didn't
question.
limit him to 30 days for
No, no.
somebody staying there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm about 199% certain that doesn't, but, because that's,
Yeah,
it's like a
it's
special
like-
use,
it was
yeah,
a special use
yeah, it was a
permit.
special use permit, but that's like for like, it's like a campground use, so
Yeah.
that's how it's
Okay.
defined, so they can't go longer than 30 days. And then the last one was this, so several years ago, you made a change to the land development code that basically all the properties that are C1 and C2, which is pretty much everything up and down Highway 25, you had restricted it that you couldn't do any big multifamily projects, and the reason was to preserve it for commercial use. There's some exceptions, like if you do units above a building. But basically, we're trying to preserve it for commercial use and basically restrict someone just doing a big apartment complex in there, which was happening.
But the
starting to
work
happen.
rate is still.
That's still, oh, yeah. So there was some language that they didn't clean up on here that still reference allowing residential. And it was cleaning that up. It was in the front part of the description. In section 2.7 of the Land Development Code, it talks about, it's like some opening language in there that's referring to allowable uses, not allowable uses, and residential is still in there, like the old language. So they just missed that in there. So, that's all that is. So it was, they were trying to kill a bunch of birds here with one stone,
Right.
rather than him come back in a month, Eric, and say, oh, we want to clean this up, or suggest we clean this up, or change something in here, or clarify it. So that's what it is. And he'll give more background on it, but just in the interest of time, if you, that's what's happening.
All right. Any other questions or comments on that item? All right, moving on to item number 6, update on the town center project, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So last month, I kind of broke the news, and I did it by email, and then had some comments, under manager comments, about kind of where we're at with the town center project, and with Lewis Real Estate Group and the Waddell's kind of officially pulling away from this as a result of the last comments and the traffic impact analysis, more specifically the restricted left-turn movement in there. So Eric and I have been, reaching out, and some groups have been reaching out to us, other developer interests, and I'll mention that in a minute. But the first thing I just want to say, we did contact Martin Lewis with Lewis Real Estate Group to just kind of debrief with him. I mean, we talked to Will and got a lot of feedback from Will Bowie, their engineer, but we set that up with Martin Lewis, and he explained the market right now, and, things are slowing. I do think some of this had to contribute with the development costs down there, but he said the major overriding issue that right now has just pushed them away from this, and they've been trying real hard to make it work, and he kept reiterating they were very interested, wanted to do this, was the restricted left-turn movement. And maybe that restricted left-turn movement needs to stay that way. But we wanted to at least debrief with the district engineer. We have a new district engineer now, Troy Wilson. And so Eric and I have a meeting set up with him to convey this to them. I don't know if anything would be adjusted. Of course, you all would have to be comfortable with it too, because, you know, the overlying point that they tried to make, and there's some validity to it, Eric and I talked about it. If we would have let this just develop organically, you would have people coming for individual permits, let's say 3 to 4 sections or 3 sections of the property. And they would have got their driveway permit, they would not have had to do a TIA, and there'd be left turn movement in there. Now, where it's obviously we all know is a problem is rush hour, 4:30 to 5:30, somewhere in there is, you know, it gets pretty bad. And then early in the morning, not quite as bad, but problematic, definitely. So those 2 times, yeah, it doesn't make sense. You could clearly say it doesn't work. Other parts of the day, it clearly can. So, we want to talk to them about it. I'm not going to say this is going to change, but Martin really tried to really hammer home that they wanted to do this, but that was just something that put them at this point saying it's not going to work, and kind of making the point, other uses that someone may bring back on a project, that may be a problem, understandably, it may be a problem for them too. So if we could get some more clarification, if there was some other mitigation improvement to offset that, I don't know. But we're going to do that because we just feel like we should, and for the sake of the project and for you all to know. So we're going to spend some time doing that. The other groups I mentioned we've been talking to, so Eric had set up a meeting with Windsor Built. You know, Windsor Built's mostly Windsor Autry. They're primarily a residential, you know, single-family home. They do multifamily too. They have a commercial division, and they've done work, some mixed-use projects, and they have a team. They've done a lot of hotel development. We met with them and had very good discussion, and they asked lots of good questions. We've done a lot of due diligence on the properties. I think it helps in kind of accelerating some of these meetings with groups. They're quite interested right now. They've asked for survey information, contacted with the railroad, because they've got some, I mean, we haven't seen any plans or anything, it's still too preliminary, but they had some ideas or thoughts about how to divert stormwater in a different way, and could they do it where it would encroach on the railroad and maybe come underneath it and look at something on our property on the west side of the tracks.
As like a
No, east
sediment?
side of the tracks.
Like a sediment pond of some
I
sort?
don't know.
Okay.
Maybe, we haven't gotten that far. I mean, that's what I would envision, and maybe that wouldn't work, I don't know. And that could be something that encroaches with an agreement with the railroad, you know, a stormwater control pond or, so.
It wouldn't affect them that much, really.
Yeah. So that's something they're we know they're taking a hard look at this, and they've acknowledged that, you know, some things are slowing down, and sometimes this is a good time for a developer group looking for their next project to start doing the planning. So we've had some good back and forth and giving them information. So just FYI, that's some of the beating of the bushes here, and another viable interest, I'll just say, our group with capacity to do something like this. And then we've had, and I know Eric and I have mentioned Magnolia Properties is doing the food hall project called the Auction House. I mean, that's going forward. That's, you know, most likely going to be completed, and I think the potential is for that to be highly successful as far as usage and people coming into this area for that, our residents and others. They pointed out some concerns, and we could tell they were analyzing this fairly closely with the railroad right away, and concerns about like long-term, if you had to pull out improvements that, you know, they kind of arbitrarily have that option. So that was one thing, and that's in trying to attract bigger names, like as tenants on the site. So that was one thing, the railroad right away. The elevation change, the way it drops from, up on 25 coming back east here, that was a concern in building into the grade, or I don't know if, Lewis Real Estate, was looking at bringing dirt in to bring it up, but that was one concern. And then the last was just valuation on it. You know, we had it appraised, and it was at 2.4 million, and that's what we negotiated our agreement with, you know,
Right.
prior developer, and that's fair market value. They're kind of thinking there's, you know, as you look at the challenges with the property, that should be factored in, and maybe the value lowered somewhat. I don't know. Who knows? The value could be even higher than what that 2.4 million is, but if you factor and negotiate these things in, maybe some of that price comes down to, you know, compensate for that or mitigate their investment
But
costs.
2.4 million, that really doesn't cover what we've got into it, does it?
Well,
I mean, we're already taking a little bit of a hit.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Look at all the stuff we've had to do to get it.
Sure, but that, you know, we've also, it's been a public-private partnership.
Right.
And we've been investing, they invest, we're, you know, to some extent subsidizing a little bit of the development to try and make it happen.
Right.
So, that's, yeah, and I want to mention those two things, and then, you know, I talked about options, you know, and in the report here, you know, do we continue these outreach efforts, which we are, I mean, we'll do that on our, you know, staff-wise on our own, and to continue to support, go after that aggressively. The other thing was, do we look at new requests for proposals? You know, we did an RFP a couple of years ago, which led to the group that we ultimately had a contract with. But, you know, do we do that now, or, you know, do you want us to wait? I'm starting to think the timing might not be really good right now.
When was the last appraisal for that property?
The appraisal, it was a year and a half ago, at least. It was about a year and a half ago. Yeah, the appraisal might start getting dated now. I wouldn't doubt if we got into serious negotiations, we might have to look at updating the appraisal. I mean, that's one tool to determine fair market value.
Because you figure out back then we did it, probably had all the old buildings and everything else.
Yeah.
You cleared the building.
Yeah.
The appraisal probably went up tremendously.
Well, it's a kind of a two-way thing. I think they appraised a little bit higher because of the value of some of the buildings down there. But with them cleared, there's also an advantage. We did the clearing because really most of those buildings were not going to be used. Yeah, like the feed and seed or the Fletcher lawn and garden probably had the most potential, and it was a shame, you know, we couldn't keep it, but that was probably the one that had maybe some potential to try and sell, you know, repurpose as a part of the project. So that's an issue, but I tend to think, I don't think we completely rule out doing another RFP, but we might want to hold off a little bit here and watch the market and see how our discussions with other interested parties move, and if that doesn't seem to be going anywhere, we look at it as something really broad, as hard as we can get out there, locally, nationally, on the property. And it's not just the 25, but it's the surrounding. because
Right,
that's where-
and that's what I was gonna say. I mean, we may not wanna rush into this, because I think the value of the property would definitely look better when that food hall opens, and if it's a success, that's gonna bleed over onto our property.
I really think it will. I mean, you think of some inertia that you know, what happens in some, I'll just use, whether you're a fan of South Slope or not, I know downtown Asheville's got issues. And they're trying to overcome that, but, I mean, I think that started out kind of small with one craft beer place and then food added, and I mean, Buxton Hall is nice. I mean, that's a nice restaurant draw, and then you have those other things that people come into around there. So that's a pretty popular place. So I think that built, this could have that same potential, and also if that takes off, I think Magnolia Properties' interest in our property would probably go up. So, and they're one that's got capacity to do this. So that was one thing on the RFP, or another option. And the last thing I was going to mention is, do we, consider other uses for the property? When I say other uses, I don't mean residential, something like that, but like a single-use commercial use. Like, we've had groups take a run at this as a grocery store. It would probably be like boutique type grocery store. Yeah, I see Megan shaking his head. I mean, yeah, it doesn't really fit the vision on there. It's still commercial, it'll be high use, but
It's not really.
for the mixed
Yeah,
use,
we
right?
need to build it downtown.
Yeah, or all retail with nothing else mixed use, or maybe a mall, all office commercial, which could be a medical use. I'm just throwing things out there if we feel like we're really stubbing our feet on this. But I think the potential is still good, and still solid there for a quality mixed use development. We just hit some roadblocks there.
Go ahead, Keith.
There's a place out in Brevard called Poppy's. And
Yeah,
I guess
I
it's considered a grocery store, but it's got like a sandwich shop, a
Yeah.
coffee shop, an upstairs where you can.
Is that on the right when you're going in?
Yeah, it's got a different
Yeah,
name
it's
now,
way-
doesn't it?
yeah.
But you really want
Yeah.
to check that, I mean, something like that. I know it's probably classified as a
Right.
grocery store, but it's really a lot more than that. And everything in there is a specialty item.
Yeah, it's
So
nice.
it's like, you
I've
don't
been-
get a bag of Doritos.
But it's not a
Yeah.
chain either.
It's not a shame. But I mean,
It's almost like fresh market.
Yeah,
Fresh
it is.
market.
On a
type
more
of
local
quality,
scale, really.
yeah. So,
Thank you, yeah, I think that's a good example of something that,
Well, I'm okay if you continue, but staff continue to reach out to the interested parties, that
Yeah.
will work out, and maybe look at the RFP.
Yeah.
What you suggest is probably appropriate,
okay.
makes sense.
Luckily, we're in a position where we don't have to do anything in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, we're in good shape, I mean, the town's in very good shape financially, the debt service is not a burden on the property. You put enough cash into it to get that, and plus, the loans
rates
get
were
paid
low,
down,
yeah.
so our payments go down lower, year to year as we pay this off, so. That's all I had on that. And, I mean, I can discuss it again briefly next week and just make sure Sheila's, you all concurrence on that, so.
Sounds like we're in agreement.
yeah.
Okay.
All right, anything else on that item? All right, moving on, item number 7, update on the performance measures, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So I talked to you all back in, several months back, I think it was February, with a kind of initial report on a real preliminary draft of some of these measures across all of our departments. And I've met with department heads on this and got some feedback on it. And the police department in particular, put together a lot. And so the draft you have in here is much more condensed. Because I talked to the chief and I'm like, I think it's way too much to bite off right now.
Data collection's tough.
Pardon me?
Say data collection's tough.
Yeah. What about that?
I just say data collection's tough.
Yeah, it is. And so now the next thing on this is going to be a little bit more massaging, but I want to set up, or help department heads set up some templates to start recording this data and this information on the measures so we can start tracking it. And it's something that will evolve over time, but I think it's a good starting point. And if you want to get into discussing any of the particulars in here, I'm happy to go through it, or if you spend some time on any of the questions next week, we could do that. Like the police department one stuff is, their measures that are towards the end, there's something that's going to need to be changed in there. He talks about this success being compared by the biennial survey, and I think when I debrief with you about the results of our POCO survey. I think we're gonna come back and look at it every 3 years or something like that, and not every 2 years. Look at my notes on it, what you decided. So that, that would be revised, but, and like I said, there's still a little massaging in here on some of these as we set these up that might change, and it will change over time. But I think these are attainable things, some of them might not, and we'll have to make sure they're challenging yet not unattainable. And picture department heads can do this, and we can track it. And so that's kind of the I would like to, by the end of the summer here, be able to have this up and running where we're starting to track it. So that's kind of where we're at on performance measures.
The only comment I have is, it kind of looks like these performance measures are designed to measure the success of the department. And how are you going to tie these to the success of the employees in the department, which was the intent to do it in the first place?
I really wasn't trying to tie it to the success of the employees in the department, but rather what we're doing as a department or as an organization.
How good we're serving our community, basically.
Yeah.
Our citizens.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, I see how you're looking at it.
yeah, it's not, and this is where, when you start this stuff, you start looking at performance. Everybody always has a certain amount of, trepidation or anxiety on this, or worry that, you're setting this up, like as a gotcha if you don't get, the individual employee, let's say department is responsible. Is this something, oh my gosh, if I don't hit that 95%, am I failing? And that is not the intention of this. And I've tried to reassure people that the purpose isn't to set this up and say, well, you didn't hit 92%, you're going to get punished for this. Some of it's going to be, can we strive? Some of them some of these aren't going to be much easier than others, but can we strive for a higher level of performance and hit it? And if it doesn't seem attainable based on just the reality of what people are doing day to day, then we adjust it back, or we drop something. That the one I probably had the most discussion, and we haven't gotten to setting this up specifically, but Public Works. I mean, there's some challenging stuff on the fleet maintenance side. And so Jabbo's, him and I have a lot more going back and forth, understanding this and how we track, and maybe changing it and adjusting it down, because it might not be attainable. They can get all the vehicles out there within so many days. And I tried to, and again, I went through a benchmarking book that school government had done. It done a lot of national research comparison things, and tried to draft something that could be applicable to our situation or our operations. And that one might be the toughest on the fit, the fleet management, on some of those measures. But, the things on the number of complaints on garbage collect, I think that's very doable. Our Public Works Department really strives hard to, have routes completed without many complaints. Usually Jabbo can determine it, like if someone says you missed my trash, which, yes, that can happen, and yes, it does happen, but more often than not, they put it out after.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, we missed the trash, it was they put it out late, and then he'll say, well, let me check the cameras on it, and then sometimes the story changes, and you missed my trash, just like that. So, we do make mistakes, so that's, that's some of the adjustments or give and take that will need to happen on it. So I just want to give you, an update on that, and then we'll continue to give you updates or reports on how that's progressing. And I'd like to have it so you can then see the data, how are we doing this over the course of the year, and then tracking it, and have a better report for you.
I appreciate you and staff working on it, and I know it's challenging.
Yeah, thank you.
Have anything else on that item? All right, moving on to your comments, Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you. Just a few things. Our multi-use court project, the tennis, basketball, pickleball courts, it's moving along fine. It seems kind of slow right now. I think they have to let the surface cure there. I know they had concrete underneath there and then asphalt. So they're still working, I guess, on that first course of the asphalt. So it kind of seems slow right now, but there's about 2 months of work left. So you'll see that need built up a little bit more, and then it'll be the fencing and the other, kind of finishing touches on it to have that done. But that's progressing, like I said, it was 90 to 110 days to do it, so I think we're about still 60, 65 days out for completing it, as long as, we don't hit any other problems. We've only had 2 things that we've run into, you're aware of both of them. One of them was redesigning a little bit of the storm drainage to make more sense. That added a little bit of expense. And then the other was what's the other one? Sorry. It was the storm drainage, and then we did something with the leveling of the way the grade falls and the drainage on there. So they made, oh, no, that's not it. Excuse me. We changed where some of the stormwater drainage was, added expense. The other thing was it needed additional fill and undercut. So when they're doing the base, basically to get that compaction without messing with the stormwater regulations, they needed more undercut and fill. That was the other thing. So other than that, it's going fine. So I just want to let you know, it's generating lots of conversation. People see it out there. I mean, if any staff goes by, someone will come up and ask about it, or give you suggestions. It's good. It's good. Yeah, good. It's good coffee table talk. The other thing that's generated a lot of calls is, and it's not a project.
The South Mayor's Order?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Charlie Owens property there, that's along 25, and eventually he's going to be doing something out there to build on it. He wouldn't be receiving all that dirt, but right now we're not aware of any building, and it's technically that parcel's not in the town limits right there. It's a weird spot, or unusual, I should say. Then the other thing I wanted to mention, unless you had any questions on the courts project, the DOT meeting we had, DOT and Representative Balcom. So we had that on June the 12th. This is about the sound walls. Yep, and so you got a copy of the map. I had Christine copy that for y'all. So we met on the 12th. DOT, I thought, did a decent job basically explaining what they're going to do, what's left to do, because there is still an important step for this before it gets that final design and construction phase, which that should go fairly quickly because they know what they need to do and where, and they have right of way, is they need to get sign off on certain property owners here. So you've got this map, and the purple line is where, excuse me, I'll make sure I'm looking at this right. The purple line is the proposed wall. I think that's how it stops right there. So you can see it comes, if you go to the right there, starts, it says end noise wall, or starts right there. It's like kind of where it's right above the rest stop. And it'll continue down, of course, everywhere above that's Wildwood neighborhood. And will end right before the church there, Boiling Springs Baptist Church.
Which is where the bank begins.
Yeah, yeah. So they have to do a cost benefit on it, and that's what had the highest value in helpfulness to the residents. They did talk in the meeting about reduced decibel levels. It doesn't reduce it tremendously on there. It will help. It should see a noticeable. I was kind of surprised it wasn't a more dramatic drop in decibel levels, but it will provide tangible benefit. So the dots on here. So the blue dots and the green dots and that one red dot, those property owners will have to vote or give some type of indication that they support the sound wall going in. So that's kind of one last step on this.
Does it have to be unanimous, or?
I don't think it does, and we would need to get clarification from them how many have to say yes of this impact. The yellow, apparently they're far enough away from it that you don't have to, or they don't get an opportunity to vote on it, but they're still impacted. But these blue dots, green dot, and the one red, they're gonna get contacted in August they're estimating August by DOT to request, do they support this? And I think they'll have to do something specifically to indicate that they support it. So that has to happen. And hopefully they all will, or enough of them will, to do this, otherwise it's not gonna happen. So that is an important last step. We've asked DOT when that goes out to let us know so we can help make sure these residents get notified. And, over communicating is fine, because I can see someone didn't get it, it got sent on the countertop, they aren't looking for it, they aren't prompted and take action on it. So that is an important step, but it's been funded. They've got the distance of the wall indicated here. It will make tangible improvements to noise levels. And so if they approve it, they had mentioned a timeline of somewhere in September to November for design and construction. So that's what they're looking at, but I want you all to be aware of what was happening with it. And we had good turnout from residents, from people in Wildwood that came out, so that was, they asked lots of good questions.
And I'll say I've had a lot of comments from people totally outside of this orange area saying that they were concerned and they wanted the sound wall, so it's actually a little bigger than what the UT is making it look like.
Yeah, and I remember even there was a resident in Windsor Forest a year and a half ago or so who was raising a lot of concerns about increased noise levels from the construction project and concerns about, even once it's done, that increased noise levels as far as Windsor Forest, and pointed out all the trees that were taken down. And they've done a berm, and it's not much of it. It's not a significant berm height-wise. Maybe in some areas it's higher as it affects. And if we planted trees, well, it's gonna take a long time for those trees to grow up in there to get that benefit of the sound absorbing. So, good news. I mean, they've got a game plan here. They really scrutinized per their rules how to apply this, and some of the dots in there may change. I have a feeling if it does, not much, or this is probably it for the people who need to be notified. So,
Be curious to see how it goes contacting those people, whether there'll be somebody that say, I don't want to wall in my backyard.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that could happen. I would hope they'd rather, number one, if it's an aesthetic thing, see that than look at the interstate. It just walks your vehicle. I would think that, and then the noise. I mean, I'm just,
They double up.
if
on
I
it,
live
because
right,
that's
I'd
the
rather
on-ramp.
see that than the interstate.
You're doubling up on noise because you got the interstate push, that's the on-ramp from the
Where
rest area.
everybody's
So
accelerating.
you give everybody accelerating, so it's a
Yeah.
double whammy, you know?
I think you're right, they mentioned that.
So
Uh,
I like it.
And hopefully coming in and out there, you won't get the Jake brake, or excuse me, the engine compression brake.
Yeah, because you're on the other end.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Now, if they ever build houses over on the quarry, then they're gonna have the issue
yeah,
with the other end.
yeah. So I think it's a good distance of a wall and it'll have benefit to them, but
I think
gotta prove it still. So that's interesting. If they funded it, you'd think it'd just be going in at this point, but I guess maybe because it's coming after the fact and you had that whole phase for resident input when it was being designed, maybe they have to do this now. So I guess it's a fair thing.
Speaking of Windsor Forest, I didn't receive a letter, but I think you all did, you shared a letter with me. I think council received a letter from a Windsor Forest resident about some kind of broadband related tower.
Oh, I saw it mentioned.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, it was sent to us too.
I didn't get the letter.
Do you know where the tower's going?
So what exactly-
Well, right now, there is no specific tower that we're aware of. And there is, in the general statutes, they did allow, I want to say loophole, an allowance for, there's shorter devices that like to go on like a telephone pole, only that height, I think it's 40 feet, something like that. And it's that short area improvements for cell.
Extenders like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, boosters. I contacted, his name was George, I contacted him twice, but he never,
Yeah, well,
I was kind of curious.
they were in there exploring the neighborhood, and understandably residents, some residents concerned about that, but they have authority to go in right away to do that, and they've left that open because it's so restricted now to place a regular cell tower, or whatever you define as a regular, they're much taller, much more noticeable. We've got 3 in town. We actually have pretty good coverage in Fletcher. But the problem they're running into is more and more we're using our phones for so much device usage that the draw on it, the data usage is up, and they're getting hard pressed for needing more, basically tower or cell strength to accommodate the demand. So they're looking for places to do this. It doesn't mean one's gonna go in Windsor Forest. And we're trying, we're watching it. If there's anything we can do to block it or if there's some, but right now, from what we can tell, there's nothing in the law that allows us to restrict that.
Right.
Eric's been digging into some of the regulations, and I can share it with you too. But if there's something else that comes up, you're hearing from residents, if you let us know, and then we'll research and see what we can do. We certainly don't want to make it easy for a cell phone provider to come in there, but it's not as simple as they just come in and they want to put one up. There's a lot more involved. But there is something out there on that smaller one that would be like on a telephone pole about that height.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, if we're to need a block, we're going to need legislative assistance.
That's our interpretation right now. And we can get other people involved that maybe understand more of the nuances of this.
Yeah, I
like
certainly
maybe-
can learn more. So I
Yeah,
don't
from the league,
understand.
or, an attorney or someone that's specializing in this. But that's what they're running into. And, obviously, we don't want, to see this in a subdivision popping up there, but I mean, they're trying to find places to boost service. I mean, I'll just use for example, I go out to Lake Lure once in a while. It's awful out there. They have Wi-Fi for the town does for the lake, but I don't know, people, I got Verizon. Verizon's got the best coverage around here, and it's really poor. I mean, they need more.
The letter was the complaint is on that, I put it in people's front yards.
Yeah.
Online, I can't, if it's a telephone pole, I can't put it like, in a roadway.
Right.
Right away.
Right.
It kind of blends in.
Yeah.
The rest of the telephone poles, but
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest complaint.
Yeah. Whatever we can do from a regulatory standpoint to not make that easy, we will do. And I don't think these companies want the negative pushback either of going into someone's front yard there and saying, well, we can, stick it there.
Does anybody know if something changed with the 5G because they said it's gonna start affecting the airplanes this week? And I find that ironic because I went to the lake yesterday and I could not get a signal. And I've always got one, not a great one, but I've always had a signal, and I couldn't get the signal at all yesterday, period. And I just wondered if there's something, but I saw a blog where they were talking about the 5G was gonna start on Wednesday, I believe, affecting something with the airplanes. I'll look back into that. Okay.
It's called small cell, I think is what they call it.
Small cell?
Yeah. Okay. I'll touch base with Eric again on this and give you a little more background on it too. But he's trying to read up on the latest on this and so.
Thank you. Any other business of council? All right, do you have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
A motion to adjourn, do you have a second?
Second.